So, I did an episode last time.
Yes.
And that was my first ever to talk about mental health on this one-of-one thing. I've spoken about it before, but I always feel like it's important to talk about it, especially within our communities, because it's it's like there's a stigma around it. And the thing that pushed me when I was doing an internship was the fact that I was seeing so many stories about young Africans who are killing themselves.
Yeah.
And it's like no one is shedding light on it. You know what I mean? Like, what are some of the reasons you think it's such a silenced matter in our communities?
I think for a long time when I was growing up, you would see people on the street, whether they were homeless or in a bad place. You would hear stories of women being, sorry for being graphic, but being burnt because they were known as witches by people in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came here, I got into working in disability, and then I've recently got into mental health. So I've been doing mental health for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
I studied community services in TAFE. So I've grown my knowledge over the years, and looking back at those situations that I saw when I was growing up, I'm like, wow, these women probably were suffering from dementia, and they thought they were someone else, or they were hallucinating, but because we have a lack of education back home, they were immediately thought to be possessed or demons or something like that.
It's always associated with something like that, because when I talk about it with like some of my friends, because I have friends from church, and I'm a Christian too, and I've had a lot of mental health related issues. People associate it with demons, like demonic stuff or whatever, and it makes it very hard for you to open up or talk about some of these issues, you know what I mean? And I hate the fact that we have that stigma around it, because sometimes people either say, oh, you're weak, like you don't have an issue, you're just weak, you just keep focusing on the negative things or whatever. How can we change that stigma?
Education, just educating, and that's the biggest issue, is how to go about educating people who've had these things or thoughts, you know, so ingrained in their mind that they don't want to see any change. Yeah, that's the hardest part, because with Africans especially, with my people, like we are so adamant when we follow something, we're so adamant, like this is how it goes, this is how it's supposed to be, you can't teach me anything else. So that's the biggest struggle. But I think with the young people learning more about mental health, it could open the door for them to teach other people, their young ones and their grandparents or their parents about the mental health issues, because most people back home, they'll have mental health issues, but they won't know about it because they don't talk to anyone about it. They just keep it inside. And hopefully we start to educate people a bit more.
Some people argue and say that, especially when you're in Australia, they'll be like, how can black people still be dealing with these things when there's services available? And I remember my sister and I were watching Grownish. And they had an episode where they were talking about, because there was a black guy that killed himself, right? Their services. So people are like, well, I mean, their services there, so why are they not? And they were discussing the fact that it's important to have people of color in positions where they can help each other, because we understand each other. It's different sometimes, not in a race-related issue, but just having someone who can fit in your shoes, help you with therapy or counseling or whatever. What do you think about that, especially when it comes to people arguing, saying, well, their services, so why are you killing yourself?
Sometimes the services are not enough for people who take their lives. Like, they need more. They need to feel something. Like, it's well and good having the services, but if your family are not supporting you and you feel like you're alone, going to a service will not help you feel like you have people by your side, because those people are just there to do their job. So I think it's a matter of just reaching out to people who we feel like, because sometimes you'll find someone who has a mental health issue, they'll be drinking with you all the time. The signs are there, but we don't see the signs. And we just think this is a person having a good time and they're happy. And next thing we hear, they've taken their life because we didn't open our eyes to what was going on. And it's a tricky situation to kind of navigate. But
And picking up from what you said about signs, seeing the signs, how can you be there for a friend of yours? Because that was the last question that I stopped at, was that we are all surrounded by people, but we feel alone, especially when we're going through either depression or whatever it is we're dealing with. You can have family, you can have friends, but there are moments you really don't believe that those people are there for you, you know? And I wanted to touch on what are some of the ways that you think someone can deal with mental health if they have no one. Because that's sometimes what leads to suicide is the isolation.
Yeah.
But sometimes also you need to find your strength when you're alone.
That's
So
true.
what are some of the ways that you think other people, if they feel like no one is really there for me, like if you had to give them advice to say that, you know, to deal with whatever it is that they're going through, what would that be?
First of all, you should obviously seek treatment, but also you should find a purpose in life as well. Because I feel like a lot of people, sometimes they may find themselves in a dark place and they don't want to do anything. They don't want to go to work. They don't want to hang out with their friends. They don't want to do this and that. Find something you're passionate about, and it'll create, not a distraction, but it'll create kind of like a way for you to kind of cope and exert all your frustrations. Find a sport to do. Go play soccer, do kickboxing or something like that.
Yeah.
Something that can take out all your aggressions that you're feeling. Because if you stay at home and you don't talk about it, then it's just stuck in there.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing you can do, is just keep everything inside and not talk about it, because it's gonna come out eventually. Like it's gonna explode.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to be in the form of like a psychotic breakdown. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because people, they feel pressure from family, they feel pressure from
Everywhere.
school, work, all these things. Yeah. And because they're not talking to anyone about it, then
Especially with our cultures, not just African culture, even some Asian cultures as well. People have so many pressures, whether from school, work, whatever, and they are taught to just suppress it and deal with it. And that's the other thing I wanted to ask you is, if you are friends with someone, how can you be there for them? Because usually within our cultures, you're told toughen up. So it's really hard for someone to ask for help because they feel like that means that they're weak or they don't have their emotions in control, whatever. So people usually are just like walled up when you ask them, are you okay or whatever. What are some of the ways that if you're a friend of someone and you're seeing these signs that you can try and find a way to be there for them, to let them know that I'm here if you need me?
I think one thing people do is when they see someone with an issue, with a mental health issue, they feel like they have the mental health issue. They always approach it from a way of like, let me find a script of questions I can ask this person. And, oh, how are you feeling? Why is this making you feel this way? Sometimes people don't want to answer these formal questions. Sometimes people just want you to be there. You don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just need you to exist in their space, and you also have to move at their pace as well, because sometimes I feel like people struggle to handle people with mental health issues, because it's like, why am I spending my time going through the motions with you when I could be doing something fun out there? That's why people end up feeling alone, because it's like, this person can't take the time to deal with me and my issues. So you just have to practice patience.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a big one.
Listen.
Yeah.
You have to listen to them and just kind of use what they tell you. Listen and use what they tell you to kind of push them in the right direction, but at their own pace.
Yeah, I do agree with that, because I think sometimes within our communities or cultures we do lack patience. Like we want you to just be okay quickly.
Yeah.
You know, like especially if it's someone who, say for example, they never feel loved or they have insecurities. You just want them to be like automatic, like get over it. Like it's like you want to help, but you're not going about it the right way.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you have a little bit of impatience because you just want them to just change and be good automatically. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is there's so many mental health signs, I feel, that are there in our cultures, in our communities. Because, I mean, in Africa, honestly, there's domestic violence, and it's these things that we normalize. We act like it's normal. And I wanted to come back to, I remember we had this conversation about girls on Facebook. Kind of asking for the wrong kind of attention, needing the wrong kind of attention when we're talking about young girls who have certain pictures and they have these grown men who are old enough to be their uncles and their fathers thirsting for them in the comments, and to them they think that that's okay. You know, what would you have to say about that to young females mostly? It's not like guys don't do things to get attention, but girls, I think, sometimes crave the wrong kind of attention because they have insecurities. So they are having the wrong kind of male attention. Because I feel like that can really put a lot of girls at risk.
It can.
Because a lot of men, when they see you in person, they can think, well, this is, and you can get stalkers as well. They can think, well, this is how you kind of project yourself on social media.
Yeah.
So if I see you in person and I feel like grabbing you, I can do that. You know, I saw that you were very, very passionate about that. Just talk more about that. Why did that touch your heart? Like, why did that affect you?
Because I was scrolling through my Instagram, like the explore page where they show you different people you can follow and all this, and I was noticing a pattern of like these girls, not from here but from South Africa.
Yeah.
And they were young girls. Like if you go to their bio, most of them have their ages in there, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm 15, I'm 16, I'm 14."
Yeah.
And I look at the pictures and I'm like, there's something wrong here, because first of all, you're posting yourself in your uniform, and then on one hand you have pictures of yourself half naked.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this like growing trend of like making quick money through selling your body. It's like, oh yeah, I've got a great body, so I'm gonna sell myself,
Yeah.
get brands to promote me and get people to pay me for promo. But at the same time, there's always gonna be that man who's like yeah, she's a young girl, I'll get her to come to my club or do this for me and do that, and it creates that danger.
Yeah.
And as a person who has like two small sisters, that it worries me a lot seeing that happen, because I don't want my sisters to ever be in that position where they feel like they need to do that to make money, because it's just not right. It opens the door for pedophiles to really stalk your page and people to steal your identity and all this stuff, and it's just a weird situation.
Yeah, and even it is South African girls, but even when you look at it, even in Western countries, even here in Australia, there are things still that young girls do to either find validation.
Yeah.
You know, people be taking pictures like butt crack out, you know, like chest out. And sometimes I think it also has to do with some of the celebrities they follow.
Yeah.
Because when they post those things, they have like 1 million likes. People are in the comments saying, damn, you know, you are like whatever they think
so
it
you,
is.
You feed off that. And
exactly.
Like,
So, and then people have the wrong understanding. And that's the same thing I always tell like my little sister as well. Is that like you are more than the physical.
Yeah.
You know, like don't compare yourself to other people thinking that I'm not beautiful, I'm not attractive because I'm not like that girl who is barely like clothed, almost naked. Like it's like free porn on Instagram, to be honest. That's what it looks like. And it's the wrong mentality that people are getting as well. And the other thing I want to touch on, I think, in our communities, we have started talking about mental health, but mostly with the women. And with the men, it seems like it's still something that we dodge a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember once I had an interview with Keith, and he touched on it as well and said that, you know, the way that mental health is addressed with women is much different from men. Do you think that it's harder to talk about mental health within men, like amongst men, and why do you think that it's so hard to like tackle it?
I think it's because, well, I'll speak from like a perspective of like an African male. You know, we have this like whole masculinity type of thing that we have to kind of keep up, and you have to be the man of the house, you have to be this, you have to be that, and sometimes you don't have to be that for people. You don't have to be, there's too much pressure sometimes, and it makes it hard to talk about mental health issues because people feel like they need to be too strong. Men feel like they need to be they need to keep up a facade to be like, yeah, I'm a man, I'm like, I can do this, I can
I don't have
this.
no feelings.
You don't have any feelings, and that's one thing I've struggled, because I don't have a lot of guy friends, because like a lot of the time I'm like, I'm the type of person who's open and I want to talk about things, and if you have things that are troubling you, like you should be able to talk to me about them. So if you can't talk to me about them, it's highly unlikely that we'll be able to be friends. Because I know that you're very closed off and you're clearly hiding something. Like I was talking to someone, I met a guy randomly at a party, and he clearly had like a slur in his speech, and he was just very off. And I have this way of like noticing things in people. And he started to immediately, we spoke, he started to open up to me about things that normal people do. They don't open to people about this stuff like on the first meeting. And he was telling me how he had bipolar. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And the messed up part is that he was calling himself crazy, and I was like, you know what, if you get diagnosed with like a mental health issue, it doesn't mean you're crazy.
You're not crazy.
It just means it's something that needs to be taken care of and it's something
Right.
that can be managed,
Right.
but you're not crazy. And he was very adamant that he was not
Normal.
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 Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the struggle, getting to someone like that and explaining to them that this stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know, we're all not perfect. Like humans are not perfect. They're not
Yeah.
meant to be like one singular thing. Like sometimes something may be off or something may go wrong, and
Yeah.
it's just about handling. There are people in worse situations than that who are living their lives perfectly. So
Yeah, and I think also African men have found ways to deal with their issues through like alcohol. That's the most like common thing I've noticed is that men have issues, but they hide it behind the alcohol.
Yeah.
Too much drinking. That's how they think that they can deal with it or whatever. I think the other thing I wanted to ask you is how can we change that conversation? Because there's one thing that I really loved when Nipsey Hussle passed away, also with XXX death, and I think someone else as well, another African American person. I think it was Charlemagne who posted a whole post about men appreciating other men. Like, it's okay for us to call each other kings and uplift each other.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be weird for me to say, you'll be fine, king. You know what I mean? Because people will be like, homo. You know what I mean? They'll be like, pause, that's kind of gay.
Yeah.
But it's like, I feel like, because he was basically trying to push for, like, it's okay to show affection
to your
as
friends, yeah.
brothers,
Yeah.
because that's what we are. We are brothers. We need to uplift each other and show each other that I'm there for you, rather than when you're dead.
Yeah.
Then I'll be like, RIP, I should have loved you when you were here. So what are some of the ways that you think we can change this, especially within the male population, the black, let me not just say African, because it's black, within the black male population, what are some of the ways that you think we can change that conversation? Especially you, because you're a male,
Yeah.
obviously. But yeah, what are some of the ways that you think you can tackle this?
Just teaching people to be more open-minded. Like, for example, with the guy I told you about, Gracious, who I
Yeah.
did the song with. I did a few songs with him, and he's been one of my friends for like, I think, pretty much the majority of the time I've been here. And we are we're very open to each other. Like the other day, he was asking me for advice on relationship stuff that he was going through.
Yeah.
And that's the type of thing that, you know, makes me happy inside, because
Yeah.
it's like, like we should be able to talk about
Should
these
be
things.
normal.
And, yeah, it should be normal. Like you shouldn't have to. He was going through a few things, and he shouldn't have to go
Bottle
through them
it
alone.
in, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I've been in a 4-year relationship, so I know up and downs and all this stuff. So I can give you advice and tell you this. And
Yeah, you got the experience.
yeah, experience.
Yeah. You be like 4 years in the game, 4 years in the game. I can tell you a couple of things, but yeah, I agree with that.
So we just have to open up the floor for conversation, and that will take time. It won't be like an easy thing,
Yeah.
and I don't think it'll be an easy fix. It won't happen in 5 years. It won't
Yeah.
happen in 10. It'll be a long time, because you're changing people's mindsets.
Yeah, and that takes the longest time.
Yeah,
I agree
exactly.
with that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this conversation.
No problem. It was very good.
Yeah, we'll talk more about mental health in the future, and maybe I'll have you on again, because
Yes.
I do really want to keep pressing this. It's something I'm really passionate about. I've talked about it before, but I still want to even have panel discussions
That would
with
be dope.
different kinds of people, and even like maybe ask the public questions, because some people have questions that they don't have answers to, and we don't have the answers to everything, but we can always try to like help each other step by step. So that's hopefully I can have you again, and maybe have more people and just have different perspectives and talk about this whole mental health thing.
It will be a pleasure. Come on.
Thank you very much.
She said she want love, so it's on site. I got your ex-man, now he calling my phone. Cause he heard that I do it right.